Hello and welcome to the EdSurge Podcast, a weekly look at how education is changing. I'm Jeff Young, an editor and reporter here at EdSurge. We're a national publication covering education. Okay, that's the way we always start our podcast. If people have heard it, and I thought it'd be kind of fun to do that. We are Good Morning Learning Man. As some of you know, that's our podcast theme song. We do this podcast every week at EdSurge. But I'm excited to be here today at Arizona State University's Shaping EDU conference and Learning Man virtual kind of week-long extravaganza. And we are, over the next hour, going to basically let you all into our virtual studio as we're recording an episode that will run on our podcast channel. But we do not want it to just be a listening-only experience. We do, since we are here together, we will be opening this up to questions, and I know that there are going to be valuable perspectives in the audience too. So please do, as you're listening to us, start the conversation here. Be thinking of some questions or just your own experiences to share after we get through some formal stuff at the very beginning here. So honestly, thanks everybody for being here. This is it's a real pleasure for us to do this. So the theme of today's session is, so at this ASU's conference today, I'm told is flipping scary stories, which I think, like everything like Learning Man and Learning Human, has kind of some double meanings. For this hour, we're going to talk about a topic that I do see as flipping scary, which is the new challenge to college retention in this COVID era. It's hard to make a joke like flippant about something that is so serious, but this pandemic and the economic crisis we're in, there's this chance that it could lead to a wave of college stopouts or dropouts and derail the educational dreams of people. And so, but of course, and luckily, there are plenty of leaders trying to flip that script. So make that a flip the scary and make it not as scary to prevent such a scenario from happening and to keep learning going. And so that's the tough challenge that we think, should be addressed head on. And that's what we're going to do right now. So I'm happy to say we have two incredible guests with me to do that. I'm going to introduce them in a second, so just stay tuned. One is a college administrator, and the other is a student and activist. So I'm going to cue up that music again because we are going to run this eventually on our feed. So I wanted to kind of sound like one of the episodes and really jump in. And then again, in around like 20 minutes or so, 25 minutes for sure, I'm going to open up the floor, get people's thoughts and questions, and really excited to do that too. All right, let's do it. Hello and welcome to the EdSurge Podcast, a weekly look at how education is changing. I'm Jeff Young, an editor here at EdSurge. I am here today at the Shaping EDU conference, otherwise known as Learning Man, at Arizona State University, or at least hosted by Arizona State University. We are all zooming in from our homes and offices or wherever we are. And we're talking about the new challenges to college retention in the COVID-19 era. It is hard to read the headlines these days. We are in the midst of a global pandemic. It's not only a nightmare for public health, but it's sparked an economic crisis impacting just about every sector of our society. As we hold this discussion today, we're here, it's summer. Colleges are frantically planning for the fall. And even though no one really knows what campus is going to look like in just a couple weeks or what the job market's going to look like, it's basically the academic year is going to start and something's going to happen. And the question is, will classes be online? And if they are, will that work for students? Will it work for all students? Will students and their families be able to keep affording colleges? And so one of the biggest questions is how to keep the nation's students on track. And that's what we are digging into in today's episode. I'm joined by two guests who will share their perspectives and what they're doing to tackle this challenge. First, we have Mordecai Brownlee, Vice President of Student Success at St. Philip's College in San Antonio, Texas. I'm pleased to say that Dr. Brownlee is now a columnist for EdSurge, and he recently wrote an article about how we can close the digital divide in the COVID era. He's got a lot of thoughts about college retention. Dr. Brownlee, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And at this conference and others like it, we talk a lot about students, but they're not always included in the discussion. But today we also are joined by Marjorie Blen, a student at City College of San Francisco and a senior fellow at the nonprofit Students Making a Change. Marjorie, thank you for being here. I think she's muted, but she's here and she's nodding.
Oh, I said thank you for inviting me. I'm so sorry.
No, it's great. You're wonderful. Okay, so I am going to start off with a couple questions for Dr. Brownlee. Can you start by giving us some context and talk about what you see as some of the new challenges for college retention and completion really in this time of pandemic?
Absolutely. And once again, thank you for having me, Jeff. So, it's such an interesting time. It's an unprecedented time, and we all are aware of that. When we think about students remaining on their academic pathway, things just got even more complicated, right? We already had our various challenges that we were dealing with for some of those students. It was driven economic in nature. COVID-19 has accelerated a bit of those challenges, right? Economics now are at the top of everyone's minds, unemployment and opportunities thereof, and families are being impacted. And so it would be very interesting to see how our students will fare in this new COVID era of higher education. The other thing is when we just think about connectivity, there's this assumption out there in the minds of some educators and others that students have the resources, they have the means, they automatically should have the skill sets to be able to succeed in a remote online environment. And there are some that is a natural skill set for them. There are some that can afford the connectivity, the Wi-Fi, the laptops, and all the accessories needed of their particular program. However, that's not the case for every student, whether that be in higher education and certainly in K-12. And so we have to now do more work on the front end to just ensure students' ability to be able to participate actively and engaged in their courses. That's the number one priority in regards to persistence right now.
Now, obviously, higher ed has a lot of different, it's not one thing. And it seems like this may play out differently at different types of institutions. Where do you see some of the particular challenges maybe?
So many of our big brand name institutions, right? Thinking about our land grant, our research, our tier one institutions, a large part of the attractive nature of those institutions from an enrollment standpoint, not only was the brand, but it was a bit of the culture that students were able to experience face-to-face on site, and the networking that occurred and the enlightenment, opportunities of enlightenment that occurred, intentionally and unintentionally, just being in a residential environment, just being able to attend student events. This is not to say that those weren't great opportunities of resource and learning for non-brand name, if you will, big brand name institutions. But students were drawn to those institutions because of the experience that they were able to have and gain on those campuses. Now, that is not necessarily the opportunity that's going to be afforded nationwide to students, and their parents or loved ones are going to be a bit concerned about them traveling across country now to attend those institutions in this environment of the unknown. And so certainly our four-year partners are really experiencing that from a community college standpoint. A lot of our community colleges are positioned in metropolitan areas, including rural areas, all areas that are being impacted in some form or fashion economically, right? And so while there is expected, based on the predicament thereof, and I work at a community college, of rather than changing the narrative between a gap year and changing that to be a community college year, we shall see, right? It's certainly economically going to be more friendly for a lot of families, yet some of our students will still battle with the lack of connectivity, the lack of my sense of attachment and integration with my college community by means of computer. And colleges and universities are going to have to figure out how to bridge that gap.
Yeah, I guess So if you mention the what the college experience really is, I think there's so many ways in which, some people kind of have kind of contradictory thoughts about it. I kind of feel like, because on one level, people close their eyes and picture this, quad with people playing throwing frisbees, or, and then go into this leafy campus. But then other times people are very much like, I need to get a job, and thinking more like the getting something out of college that is going to, get something on a career track. Those are very different. Those are two very different things. If you think about it, both, it's hard to, they're both important. And there's the question of, the kinds of things that happen in person that colleges, sometimes they don't even talk about it, but I think we assume, like helping people become better citizens and be in a diverse environment, so that people can kind of model a life beyond just the job. And I guess, what do you see in this, if things are online more, or even if people are back on campus, it's going to be a very different experience. Are you worried at all about, what might a, kind of, in a way, there's like retention of like dropping out or not, but there's also just like, okay, maybe you stay in college, but you might still not be getting the same full experience, even if you end up getting the diploma. Do you have any concerns around that?
Oh, absolutely. Anytime a student ever asks me, what is the purpose of college? Why, what happens at college? And I have my personal beliefs. We have several educators that have joined us on today, and thank you all for joining us. My personal beliefs as to why individuals should choose colleges, because I believe that's where you discover your truths. It's this reality where, up until this higher education environment in itself, students have adapted to the ideologies of their immediate circles. They're in a lot of cases, their immediate families, their political views, religious views, economic views, societal views are based around the environments that they have been exposed to leading up to this point in college in a lot of cases. So when a student, quote unquote, goes off to college, they're taking these realities with them, and they're now in a new environment where they are allowed to find conflict with these viewpoints and learn other viewpoints and other lifestyles, and be exposed in some cases to the very first time to these viewpoints, to these ideas. And then within that, they began to carve and shape and refine. And you think about that from a traditional four-year standpoint, and even add graduate school to that. And that's the reason why so many individuals are transformed by the traditional sense of going off to college. There's learning occurring no matter where you are. You can be in the cafeteria and just observing, or you could be at the cafe, or you could be, in a residential environment, or you could be in an experiential learning environment. And so you're learning always in these environments. Well, now we try to figure out how to translate that to online. And how are we going to do that? By Zoom breakout rooms, right? And so it gets a bit challenging in terms of how we're going to pull that off. And it takes a lot of intentionality for institutions to create these engagements for students. Experiential learning is another one of those topics that has to be at the forefront of every educator's mind, because I think Lucian just recently ran a survey trying to get a sense of how students have recently been tracking on their ideas from Generation Z in comparison to Millennials, in comparison to Generation X, as to their confidence level with the majors of selection, the major that they have selected, their field of study. And so you have students that have chosen a major of study, and they may not really be in love with it, or really believe that that may become their career path. Well, now in this remote environment, we have to create learning opportunities to help students hone in and either further that confidence in their selection of major, or we're going to have to help them with the refinement process of, well, maybe healthcare isn't for me because I don't like blood. We need to begin to have those discoveries to help students along the way, because as research shows, our failure to be able to align them and begin to build strength and refinement from their realities and their desires with the realizations of what the industry may provide them, they in themselves will then stop out, and there goes another persistence issue. So the more exposures, the more opportunities we can create for online engagements, and do our best to creating network opportunities amongst student leaders, amongst the students and their institutions, to really bring in that sense of community will help with the persistence challenge that's in front of us in this new era.
We're going to come back to you and dig into that in a minute, but I want to get to Marjorie too, and let listeners hear from her. So Marjorie, you're a student at City College and you're in San Francisco area. Can you, I guess, just tell us a little bit first about your perspective on the challenges that, I know you and maybe other students are facing right now in this, crazy time where we're in. And thank you again for joining us. I think you may even be in a car. I mean, the fact that you're taking time to join us is a great gift. Thank you.
Well, yes, thank you so much for inviting me. Well, I'm in the car because I have 2 kids, and as you know, privacy is very important right now. But COVID-19 has definitely impacted us students in San Francisco, because it kind of just hit us out of nowhere. We didn't have a plan. We didn't have the teachers didn't have, some of my teachers don't like online learning. For me personally, I saw it out what I'm going to do with my 2 kids home, my job, losing my job, and having to pass these classes so I can transfer to a 4-year institution. And it brought so many challenges. It brought, the news wasn't making any better. I was worrying about whether we were going to have a job the next month, where we were going to pay rent. How do I pass these classes? Some of my teachers, like I said, didn't do well with online. They were really like, I'm not going to do this, and it was really hard for them. And I empathize for them, because online is not for everybody, even for some educators, And as far as a student, a million of things went through my mind, and I panicked. Honestly, I panicked, because I was like, what is my education going to look like? It took me forever to come back and return to college, community college, to transfer to a 4-year college. And now that I'm at the end to transfer, I have to tough it out. And it was very difficult. I had a lot of moments where I'm like, should I just drop my classes? I got accepted to 3 CSUs and 3 UCs. And I was like, maybe this is not the time. Maybe I should just not do it at this moment. But I pushed through, and I was able to do it, and of course, community is very important. Some of my teachers excel. They did amazingly. They're like, it's not the same thing as being in person, so I'm not going to require you to have the same attention to the materials as it is being at home, because you have 2 kids. And, I adapted, and they were able to help me. In that community that my teachers were able to do at San Francisco was very important and essential for me to graduate and pass on to the next level.
Thank you. Yeah. And honestly, I was, when we talked before, it seems like little things made a big difference. For instance, I think you got an email at some point from where you're transferring into San Francisco State, I believe, that you got an email from them. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah. So, while I was, it was a day-by-day, week-by-week thing, because of the numbers of the cases of COVID-19. And I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And my earlier San Francisco State sent an email and said to all of our transfer students, don't worry, we're going to give you extension. We're going to let you make up at least one of the classes during the fall. If you want to do dual enrollment, if you are missing something, we're going to extend it all the way to the max. And I must say, in California, most of the school did that. UC Merced did that. Santa Cruz did that, where they went ahead and tried to push the limit all the way to where they could for admissions. And that made me feel better. And I was like, okay, if I don't pass one of these classes, I know I can do dual enrollment at in SF State and my community college, and be able to pass that class the next time around. And I'll be more prepared, because I'll have the summer to prepare. And that simple email of extending a deadline, telling your students, oh my God, you can turn this transcript in this last minute, made so much of a difference in my thinking, because I was like, I got this. Even if I mess up, I will do my hardest. And if I mess up, I know I can redo it. And that made a difference.
I apologize for blinking out there. We lost power in my house. This is another thing. Sorry, so I missed the last part of your answer, but I believe the audience heard it. So I think it was just a local event for me. I guess I wanted to ask you as well. You are not, you are doing it yourself. You're persistent. You're working to help other students. Work at students making a change. First off, like, what is your connection with them, and what is it?
So I'm a senior fellow, and I am basically our little nonprofit is based on trying to break systemic barriers for Black and Brown students. We do advocacy and, locally and statewide. But that changed once COVID-19 hit, because we started seeing how students started to panic, like myself. And then they began to call me and say, hey, how do I drop my classes? Hey, I can't do this. So our little nonprofit changed the vision that we had, and we became a direct service nonprofit, which we never done ever. We always been about advocacy in different levels, but we began working on how do we get students resources? How do we get them food? How do we get them Chromebooks? How do we get them hotspot? How do we get them connection to resources on our campus? If they do want to drop, which I will spend 20 minutes with a student when they will call me to saying, I really want to drop because City College gave an EW, an excuse withdraw, that wasn't going to affect your transcript. I will try to convince them to stick it out and say, no, you need to finish this. Please try whatever it is that you need. We will try to be that bridge for you to end this semester gratefully, especially for those students that were transferring out and were graduating the class of 2020. So we began to brainstorm the needs, and we did various surveys. We did them online on Instagram on our little student hub. We did them Google form where we asked students, what are your needs? And basically they had 4 needs: technology, which was a computer, hotspot, cash, and food. Those were the 4 main things that we're asking. So we began to brainstorm with our partners, what can we get? And we began giving out $25 gift card, Safeway gift card, to all students that applied to our gift card thing when COVID-19 hit back in April. And the wonderful thing about that was my college saw that, and they mimic our movement, our wanting to support students, and they began to give out their own gift cards and help out other students, which it was amazing to see that. We didn't know how to do it. I said, we're just regular students trying to make it through. We did not know what to do, how to do it. We just brainstormed every way we could and say, how can we get this money fast to students and be able to support them during this pandemic? And we started with a Google form. We started reviewing application, and we started mailing them, the safest way we could for our staff and for them too.
Wow. So you just basically saw this need and just were trying to get something to grassroots happen right away.
Yes. So our students came out with a plan, they came out with the strategy, and they came out with the outreaching. And I personally reached out to my partners, and I was like, who can give me some money for these students? And one of the wonderful partners at the county was saying, we're going to connect you with Moms Against Poverty. And they gave us $7,500, and we distributed all that to food cards to all community colleges to help out during those 2 weeks of main shutdown that everybody was panicking on.
How many cards did you end up giving out, roughly?
I think we gave out like 300 to 300 cards. We still have more money coming in for that. They still helped us. The San Francisco Foundation sent us $5,000 to give out more cards.
Now, and I hear you're also looking at other ways to.
Yes, I believe you're asking me about the grant. We began to give out
to help students and encourage them to stay in. Could you talk about that?
Yes. So
Yes.
Yeah. So we gave out a grant. So I was able to get a grant from the city of county in San Francisco for $300,000 for our students. And basically what the grant was cash grant. We are giving out $500, but we did made it very intentional. So basically it was for our spring 2020 students and our fall 2020 students. So in order for students to qualify for our $500 grant, they must register for the fall at City College of San Francisco. We're not part of the institution. No, we know their enrollment numbers or anything, but we do know that a lot of people are really contemplating not going back to college. So what we did, we tied the money to enrollment, and we also tied it to what happened to you on the spring and your needs. And right now, we're still currently giving out the grant. We're still working on it. We're still checking application. We're still reviewing everything. We worked with resource centers and retention centers as far as giving them the flyer and then referring their students. And that helped out a lot, and we have wonderful people at the college that helped us to share our information regarding our grant. And a lot of students write all these stories that I just want to help every single one of them. But unfortunately, I can't because the money is going to run out really fast. But we were intentional as far as what resources can we connect you at the college this coming fall? And two, you must be registered at least 5 units in order to qualify for this money.
So, Marjorie, perhaps we have lost Jeff on a little bit longer than what we thought. There you go. Is he coming back in there?
I think he is.
At least he froze on a friendly face frame. Whenever my face freezes, it's usually like this or something. So he got lucky.
True, very true. Mine too.
Okay, well, this has never happened, but I appreciate everyone's patience. So I'm glad. I hope people were carrying on better without me than with me. No, but I was asking, and I feel bad interrupting, but I was asking basically, it sounds like, Marjorie, you're in a position now where you're basically trying to keep your studies on track, get your life together, but also you're reviewing applications for other people for these grants that your group is giving out.
Yes.
Well, we're going to open this up to questions in just a minute. But first, Dr. Brownlee, could you say what sort of any advice you have about two colleges, about how they can, what can they do? What are some things that people can do in a very practical sense, like Marjorie's group is doing, to help be there for people and fill in these gaps that are emerging?
Absolutely. And Marjorie, I definitely want to give you kudos. I mean, the work that you and your team are doing is just absolutely amazing, right? It's because of students like you all who are able to begin to be the difference, be the change that our society greatly needs. Just kudos to you and all the work that you all are doing and will continue to do. Amazing, amazing, amazing work. So I will answer your question, Jeff, but I had to say that. Now, with that said, so in terms of some things for our educators to keep in mind, number one, we more than ever now are going to have to take a remove barriers approach, right? There's some work that's been happening nationally for quite some time. Certain groups like Achieving the Dream have been on the forefront of doing this work at the 2-year level. There have been other entities that have done a bit of this work, like the Hope Center, Hope Labs, those that are familiar with that work, where they began to look at certain issues that have proven to be barriers for students in terms of their livelihoods when it comes to financial stability and housing insecurity and homelessness. And so, more than ever, institutions are going to have to take a look at its systems and ask itself, is there any possible way that what we have now considered to be a norm will prove to be a barrier to students, right? Thinking just even down to the onboarding, the response times, even as faculty, because I teach as well. If my response time, I was used to a particular time frame in responding to students, well, that can actually now turn into a barrier more than ever for students. Why? Because as we talk about building connections with our students, as faculty, as staff, as administrators, then, if that student is at a very crucial point in needing to feel that sense of security in a new environment, new learning environment, yet they can't get a hold of me, now I've just created another barrier. Now I have just been a part of creating doubt within that student's mind in terms of their ability to persist and to make it through these uncertain times, right? Advocacy, we heard Ms. Blen talking about that, and I hope I'm saying your name correctly, Marjorie, but we just heard her speak about what's happening on the advocacy forefront, right? It's so much more than just the feel-good stories. It's essential. It's essential. Our students are doing their absolute best to fight in these times. for their livelihoods and the continuance of their dreams. We can't forget about the first time and college students coming in as high school freshmen that will be college freshmen that will be joining us from high school in this new COVID era of environment may not have the resources that they need, the certain supports in place. I mean, they're just really being caught in the midst of this, what all is going on in the midst of COVID. Also, we've got to think about the other support system areas really quickly, and I want to touch on mental health, right? More than ever, we need to make sure that our institutions are prepared to support our students through mentorship, through mental health, through financial support services. CARES Act has done one bit of that infusion. However, long-term support opportunities through foundations, through local giving, students like Marjorie who are out there being the difference is huge. Also, you heard Marjorie talk about dynamic processes, right? So we've been so used to having these hard deadlines. It has to happen this way. Well, students are doing the absolute best that they can, right? The institutions themselves need to be understanding that students are fighting to thrive in this very uncertain time. So have dynamic processes that would allow students to perhaps maybe miss a deadline. They couldn't get the form to you. Why? Because I didn't have a means to print, or I didn't have a means to do X, Y, and Z. So let's work with students in that regard and make shifts and changes to the academic calendar as necessary. OER, Open Educational Resources, is also going to be huge during this time. Again, removing those barriers. And that's essentially what I've got there. So just, again, the work, the passion, let's do what we can as educators to support our students in these very uncertain times.
Thank you. No, that's wonderful. Marjorie, if anyone has a question, please type it into the chat, or if you want to click on raise hand, or we could have you come up and ask via video, audio, whichever you're comfortable with. It's really anything. I want to also just quickly point out, I have a couple more questions too, if people are shy or delaying or thinking about their questions, but I just want to point out that I apologize again for dropping off. We had a power outage in my house. It popped back on, but while I was out, I went to my phone's connection to try to stay with the call. And then that sort of petered out because of that connection, but now I'm back on my network. But this is an example of things that can go wrong in this format, right? I mean, here I am trying to lead this discussion, and you guys didn't have me because of a glitch. These things happen for all kinds of reasons to all kinds of people all the time, right? When we're suddenly shifting to these online formats and platforms. So it turned out to be, I think, someone is saying in the chat, it happens to people. So I guess it's a live reminder of it's easy when things are working to sort of think like, oh, we can do online. And sometimes it works, but sometimes it doesn't. And those kinds of barriers, what if somebody didn't have a cell phone network that they could afford to jump onto as a backup when their network went down? Or what if, these are really things beyond students' control, and something could easily derail someone when other factors are stacking up. Marjorie, I wanted to ask you as well about student voice. I mean, you are making your voice heard. You're doing, with your actions, there in California. But I wonder, do you have any advice for college leaders or folks in this space to making sure students are being heard? You're muted. Yeah, in this crazy time.
Yeah, so we all have to do our best, and I'm a very equity-minded person. So meeting the students where they at, not everyone is at the same level. We all have, like, for example, I go in a classroom, you will never know that I have 2 kids at home, that I am working up 2 jobs, so to just get to know them a little bit more during the semester and try to be flexible and understand that they're trying. It might not show and reflect it, but trying to get to the root of things. As a college, I think we should become a community. Schools is our communities, and the community is only going to thrive if we help one another. And while we live in very divisive times right now, I think that education should not be divisive. I think education is what unites people. It should keep us all saying, education is for everyone, and we're going to help you. These are really hard times. It's times we never seen before, we never deal with. So don't be afraid of think outside the box, because it's not traditional times. You can't traditional ways are not going to work in this non-traditional time. So don't be afraid to ask your colleague, maybe we should do this, maybe we shouldn't, maybe we should, and just brainstorm the best you can, because there is no right or wrong answer. All we can do is, I love all my teachers. All my teachers are wonderful. They all work with me. Even the ones that had really hard time with online, I still think they try very hard. And, you know, your students are going to understand if you're not very good at online, because some of us are not good at online. So just try to take away all those barriers and say, well, what can I do as a teacher to help out?
Thank you so much. I mean, I really am so glad once again that you're here. I do think at a conference like this, if it was Shaping EDU at the campus of ASU, they might have had students, but I feel like it is so much easier in this format, at least, to bring on as many voices as possible. So there's maybe, I'm really glad to hear you share, and thank you. I want to read a couple of these questions here. Brittany has a question. I'll just read it if that's all right with folks. Someone can see it in the chat as well. I work as an admission, this is Brittany. I work as an admission counselor for students coming from high school to university, and currently working with many students who are deferring or canceling admission because they want their traditional first year experience, right? Their college experience, and share that. And they're worried they won't get it with this online year. So how do you balance the value of college experience that everyone's talked about on this panel with the importance of still continuing on toward their goals at this time? And would you recommend one path over another? Dr. Brownlee, do you want to take a stab at that?
Absolutely, and thank you for your question, Brittany. Students have passions, they have desires. Some of our students are very strong-willed in regards to what they talk about, that measurable grit, right? They naturally through life have built up these abilities to be able to just fight and conquer and overcome, and no matter the situation, they will find themselves back on track. And I think as individuals, some of us have those skills, but not everybody has those skills. And so a bit of the concern with the promotion of gap year, a bit of the concern with students not continuing along their academic pathways, even in these unprecedented times, is will they ever, if they take that break, will they ever get back on track, right? The hope is yes. The hope is that that they would somehow take this as an opportunity, but not. It won't necessarily be the case for every individual. And I think that what I would encourage our high school counselors that are right there on the front lines, all of our college admissions individuals, team members, let's work with students to identify what are their desires, their end goals, their personal mission statements. Certainly we want to help students to work through their own discoveries and not necessarily prescribing for students what they should do, allowing students to be guided in their own personal discovery so they can see the value in those decisions. But I think that it is our job to be sure to provide the facts behind the implications of their decisions, right? And then in the midst of that, then provide for them some opportunities for further reflection, right? There are other options available. Well, maybe you won't be able to go to that four-year institution that you may have desired at this time. Let's talk about what's local. Let's talk about what's feasible. Let's talk about what economically makes more sense at this particular time. Let's talk about some of those other options in working with our students. And so here's the last bit I'll say with that. We should view this more than ever as an opportunity, as an ongoing conversation, not just a one-off conversation. Our students are going to need that ongoing encouragement, that ongoing mentorship, that ongoing support. It's such a dynamic time.
Thank you. And we have a question from the audience. Kate is willing to ask by video. So let's have Kate ask this and use the format here. So Kate, are you there, and can you unmute and share your question, please?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Really nice to be on this panel, Dr. Brownlee and Marjorie. I have a question for Marjorie especially. So with everything that's changed, it's obviously a huge difference moving online from being on campus and being able to sort of create that sense of community of like, hey, you're my buddy in this class. I see you in this class. We've worked together. And I'm just wondering what your experience has been. Has that campus community type of vibe transferred over to online? Like, how are you staying in touch with your the classmates and the folks that you used for support and entertainment and friendship in the college space?
It's a great question.
So when I was already a community person. So every time I walked into my statistic class or like my biology class, especially those really hard classes,
Yeah.
I would like buddy with somebody because I knew the importance of like, having that backup of knowing the information. In my statistics class, I hanged out with this group of kids and I will have their cell phone number and made a group chat so we can all thrive during, hard times.
Mm-hmm.
That group chat came in handy when COVID-19 hit because we were able to stay connected and talk about our classwork and stuff. But this is really hard times. So what I think educators should do, they should encourage students because not everybody is like me, that wants to talk to anybody,
Mm-hmm.
So therefore I think that you should encourage them to connect with other students on your online session and say, hey, you should partner with someone because it is a difficult times and it will help you. And people that are in community are more likely to succeed than someone that's swimming by themselves throughout the bureaucracy. So I think that all you have to do is encourage them. I think that if you make it mandatory and say, hey, get around with 2 or 3 people, and then they will want to please their teacher because they want that good grade. So they will do it. So I think that encouragement will help a lot for them to stay connected with people throughout the semester and have that backup layer when they feel stressed out or difficult by the material.
Okay. Thank you so much. That's really helpful.
No problem.
It's so interesting to think about community as an assignment, but a different kind of assignment, and sort of use that lever of assigning, but also then having it give back the power to the students to do with that their own self-organizing. Fascinating. Yeah. Dr. Brownlee, I see you shaking your head.
Oh, absolutely.
You're nodding.
Yeah, I'm just, Marjorie is the superstar today. I'm even learning listening to her, right? So I think that it's also important our institutions outside of the classroom, the e-classroom, create these engagement opportunities as well, right? And there's creative means to do that. Certainly our student organizations, more than ever, we're going to be depending upon our student leaders in areas of interest groups and support groups to drive those interactions and opportunities for engagement. One of the other things that we tried at our college this summer, St. Philip's College in San Antonio, a part of the Alamo College system, what we did this summer was we just held open Zoom sessions just for students to pop in and out of. We held them at different times, different parts of the day. We had some night sessions, we had day sessions, midday sessions. And it was just to say, hey, if you're a student, you need someone to talk to, you need some support, you want to come hang out, let's create these opportunities for you. And I'm here to tell you the students did an outstanding job taking advantage of those. And there were some opportunities where students just began to open up and say, I need help. I need somebody to connect with, and boom, we were able to get them the support that they need. So I think that I would encourage institutions and educators listening on this call today and this podcast to be less descriptive and say, help is being provided between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. Support and community is being built between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. because that support is needed throughout the day, right? So create multiple opportunities for people to engage, to be heard, and to be supported, because all crises and support won't happen between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m.
Well said.
And I like to say to Brittany's point about incoming high school students, since they're coming new and it's really online and it can be very frustrating and they're not getting that college experience, I think that counselors should try to pair them with the easiest class possible, because we encourage them to take like the first hard classes first, on our traditional setting to get them out the way. But because we're really dealing with like non-traditional time, just try to set up the student for success and try to say you could take part-time, you could take these easy class, and maybe coming spring things will change and we'll have a vaccine and everybody can go back to normal. But just start them off a little bit so then they don't feel overwhelmed and not having that community and that support and that being on campus, because I love being that one person on campus playing Frisbee too, So not having that and taking lighter low might make a difference between them.
Well, honestly, there's another question, but I think we only have like 2 or 3 minutes and I don't want to rush through anything. I just want to take a minute to think back over these amazing points we've had today and to really thank our panelists and for everyone to be here. I feel like we've had we've had a lot to chew on. There's this thought of starting out of the context of like, what even is college and how it's multifaceted. And so that means when it's shifted online, there's so much that needs to be done to try to make whatever is done online or temporarily kind of patched together to give all those different aspects, whether it's the academics, community, all these other things that sustain what it is to be a student at a college. And then at the same time, basically doing retention is really at the heart of all the things that end up happening, because if you end up just, focus too much on only academics, then you have that chance of people, not being engaged enough through the community to really persist. But at the same time, even if you have great academics or great community, you still have to have these economic realities met, the needs met. Marjorie, I think you're for kind of like your thoughts about like, there's the need of like the money, logistics, all these different things that are just very much like human needs. And suddenly there's this huge challenge for higher education and for faculty, administrators, students working together to try to overcome in this unprecedented time. So there's plenty to think about. And I think it's a challenge to everybody to go back to their institutions and think about how they could start something like what Marjorie's done, or think about the kinds of things that Dr. Brownlee has suggested on, catching the digital divide, thinking about community. So it's one of those things we're going to follow during the fall. But thank you to everybody. If you have any final comments, I guess, is there any kind of, if you had one thing to say to students coming in to encourage them as they head into the fall, what would that be? Maybe start with you, Marjorie.
If you are a student out there, let me tell you, I am with you. It's been really difficult. It's been real, but your education, it is valuable. Your teachers will be there. Your community will be there. We will get through this together. It's not about, if you're good or bad. It is a trying time, and don't be afraid to fail, because failure is not bad. It's a learning experience. You win because you learn how to do things better the next time around. And I hope colleges and teachers tell that to their students during this really difficult times. And I would just want to say good luck, guys, because I'm in the same boat as you guys.
Mordecai, how about you?
We will all come out of this better. Let's continue to support one another, educators. Let's continue to support our students. Let's be sure to remove all barriers that are possible. And let's continue to close that gap on equity. During this time, it's such a scary time, because all the work that has been done leading up to this time in regards to the work of diversity and equity more than anything is now a bit at stake, as we have to work as quick as possible to close those gaps, ensure our students have the resources and support that they need, no matter who they are, so they can see their dreams.
All right. Thanks once again to everybody. And please, we'll be following this. We'll be following what happens in the fall on our podcast and at EdSurge. So you can find the EdSurge podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. EdSurge.com is our site. Thank you, everybody, once again. And best of luck to everybody. Stay safe and stay healthy, and keep it going. Thank you.